Thanks for joining us on another edition of the Small Business Show with Jim Fitzpatrick, exclusively on ASBN.com.
Hey everyone, Jim Fitzpatrick. Thanks so much for watching another edition of the Small Business Show right here at ASBN.com. Today we're joined by Melinda Emerson, America's #1 small business expert, author, and the CEO of Quintessence Group. Thank you so much, Melinda, for taking the time out of what I know is a very busy schedule, so we appreciate that very much. So how's things going?
Oh, I can't complain. The holidays are fast approaching, but there's still time to make money out here. So I'm always happy to talk.
That's right. That's right. We do a lot of shows, Melinda, on franchising. As you know, that's very big these days. And you and I have kind of talked about this in the past on some previous shows. And we've gotten a lot of great comments from our viewers and such that have seen those shows. They want to learn more about this, want to get your take on it. And the topic that I'm talking about is actually purchasing an existing business. You mentioned that on the last time we got together on the show, was that there's a number of businesses out there that are for sale, and that people can benefit from if they acquire one of these companies that have been running. In fact, we even talked about the fact that sometimes people just close their business because they want to retire or they have to retire, and they tried to sell it with no takers, and the business might have been bringing in a few $100,000 net profit a year. So let's talk a little bit more about that. What's your take on all of that? Because I know that's something that's near and dear to your heart.
I think that if you know that you want to sell your business, you literally need to start planning 3 to 5 years before you actually do it.
Yeah.
Right? Because when you think about a business that you want to sell, you almost have to have 2 exits. And let me tell you what I mean by that. The first exit that you have to have as the CEO is off your own org chart, right? You can't, if your whole business revolves around you, it's going to make it impossible to sell because nobody's going to want to talk to anybody but you.
Right.
But if you put systems and managers and maybe a COO, other people in place to actually operate the business so that you can become the visionary and make the chief salesperson of the business, that is how you have to exit that first. You have to exit the day-to-day. Yeah. And then you position yourself to add value to the business so that you can get the maximum price that you want for the business. So that's the first thing, right? So this process is not an overnight process. You really need to plan it 3 to 5 years in advance. And the other reason why you need to plan it in advance is because let's say your business is worth some real money. Let's say your business is worth, your gross revenues are 10, 15 million. Yeah. You're going to sell your business. The other thing that can mess you up is not doing any tax planning before you sell the business. That's true. Right? You want to see how much money you can give Uncle Sam, just go out here and sell your business, right? You really need to be talking to financial planners so that you can position yourself to pay the least amount of taxes upon sale. And the only way you do that is if you plan that 6 months to a year in advance. That's right. So that there's all kinds of things, depending on how, successful you've been and how much of a windfall you could have, you want to make sure that you don't give too much of it to Uncle Sam. And that takes planning too. There's lots of things that go on before you exit a business. Now let's talk about the people that might be the potential buyers on the other side. And listen, I get asked this all the time. Small biz lady, if you had to do it all over again, what would you do? Honey, I would buy a business. I would never, ever start a business from scratch ever again. Right. I really wouldn't do it. It's too hard. It takes too long. There's so much risk involved. And literally, you can ruin yourself financially, and work yourself to death and potentially lose your family in the process. And that is not necessary. If you have been in corporate America or you were a government worker for 15, 20, 25 years, you got a 401k sitting somewhere. You can actually tap into some of that money to put a down payment on an existing business or a franchise. And here's the most awesome thing that most people don't know. if you have decent credit, like 680 or higher, the SBA in partnership with a bank will loan you 90% of the purchase process. Let me say that again, Jim, for the people in the back. Okay. The SBA will help you borrow money to buy a business that already has revenue. You know what they don't do? They don't give money to startups.
Yeah, that's true. So, that's true.
So what would it be if you could take out a loan to buy a business and use the revenues from that business to pay the loan?
Yep.
I'm like,
there you go.
I'm like, that's a win-win-win.
That's right.
I mean, certainly you have to be able to put your hands on perhaps 50 to 100 grand to make that deposit.
Yeah.
Or say if you're buying a franchise, or, you need to be able to make the initial franchise fee probably before you do your loan.
Right.
But some franchisors are very flexible with you. They'll wait.
That's right.
If you're a serious candidate and they're really excited about you taking over a territory to expand their brand, they'll work with you.
That's right.
You just have to tell people what you need. But I believe that, when we really understand franchise, just take franchises for a second, there is actually 4,000 franchise concepts in the United States. Most people think franchise, they think McDonald's, right? They think they got to have $2 million to buy McDonald's. No, that's not it at all. There's a franchise out here for every possible concept.
Yeah, for
but,
sure.
And matter of fact, only 1/3 of franchises have anything to do with food.
Yeah.
The other 2/3 have to do with all kinds of other businesses. And there's 5 areas of growth in franchises right now that are worth discussing. Number 1, health and wellness businesses, elder care businesses, anything around education, youth development, after school STEM programs, that kind of stuff. Pet care business. Big. These people can love these animals like they are children, honey.
Or
and
maybe more than their own children.
Willing to spend big cash,
That's
right? And then certainly elder care is another huge one. All of us have aging parents, grandparents, that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And people need help. And there's a lot of resources and money in that industry as well. Those are just 5 off the top of my head that are booming, that are growing.
I love it.
But there's so many other things out here that you could consider. Now, let me just say this to you too. Let's go back to the existing businesses that are available. Right now, we're dealing with what we call a silver tsunami. 40% of the small businesses in America will change hands in the next 5 years.
Wow.
Look, these baby boomer folks do not want to learn AI. They want out.
Right.
Their kids don't want it. They want out.
Yeah.
And they're looking for someone great who has new ideas and resources that can grow the business, that can take the business to the next level. And here's the thing, guys. Here's the secret. 90% of most small businesses in America never gross over $1 million in revenue.
Wow.
Guess what that means? Those businesses aren't that expensive to buy.
That's right.
And so,
and can still be very profitable. I've got a friend of mine that runs a $1 million business, and he takes home $600,000.
Hello. You're not going to get that from any corporation unless you're a VP of the division, right?
That's right.
I think you've got to look at, the other thing, there's so many ways to finance a business, finance the purchase of a business.
Yeah.
Sometimes, certainly, you can borrow money from the SBA, as we discussed.
Oh, yeah.
You can do something called a ROBS and actually turn your 401k into an investor in the business. And that's how you can fund it. And you can do that.
Okay.
Free. There's also seller financing.
Yeah, I was going to say.
I also, sometimes it doesn't benefit somebody to get a $3 million check, right? People are willing to take their money over time, which really lessens the tax burden of the sale. So my whole point is there's lots of ways to skin this cat out here.
I agree.
And don't think you can't afford it.
Yeah. Where does somebody, if they're interested in an existing business, where do they start out? To there's not an MLS, so to speak, for businesses, is there?
No, there isn't.
So what do they do to find out?
Well,
Where do you go to see
really,
what businesses?
First of all, you need to do a self-assessment, right?
Okay.
Before you go looking for businesses, I think you need to really think through whether or not you're willing to take on this new challenge, because it absolutely will be one.
Right.
Once
No
you
question.
decide that you're ready,
Right.
once you've looked at what your personal financial picture is, in other words, how liquid are you? How much money can you put your hands
Right.
on? Then you've got to evaluate, okay, am I going to go after a franchise opportunity, or am I going to look at the existing business pool out here?
Right. And there can also be that media, that hybrid, which is an existing franchise. That's where somebody
100%.
says, "Look, I've got a Subway franchise. I have a hair cuttery, but I want to get out of it. So it's the best of both worlds. It's been up and running for 5 years with a great, solid customer base, and it's also a franchise. But somebody says, "Hey, I'm ready to go."
Some of the larger franchisors turn over 100 to 180 franchises a year. And sometimes people have 2 or 3 and they want to offload them and go do something else. I mean, there is a resale market in the franchise industry as well.
That's right.
And in those cases, you can really get a deal if the franchisor really wants to get it out of somebody's hands and into someone else's hands.
Yes, good point.
I mean, and so you really have lots of options, but there are business brokers out here that will help you source existing business inventory. There are also franchise consultants that will help you look at the franchise opportunities out here. Now, let me say this. These people get paid based on what you buy.
Right.
So you want to be very careful. Research the people that you're going to be dealing with, because I have seen, some of these guys are really good salespeople too, right?
Yeah,
So
of course.
You want to make sure that you are buying a business that is a good business for you.
Right.
And the reason why I say that is because I have seen people buy franchises and 2 years later sell them because they needed it, right? So there's a difference between being a knowledge worker, right? Being somebody in corporate America and turning around and becoming a 6 or 7 day a week retail store owner.
That's right. That's right.
Big gap.
And you got to do your due diligence as the owner, because the broker, they might do some and they might steer you in the right direction. That's great. But trust nobody. Do your own due diligence. If a company or a business says they did $1 million, great, show me. I want to see the million somewhere on your spreadsheets, on your books, on your tax returns. Let me see all that with my own eyes to be sure that rather than just somebody telling you.
The thing about it is that people, there's a couple of things that you have to understand when you're buying an existing business. A lot of times the owners are trying to sell the business without anybody knowing.
Yeah,
not
that's
employees,
right. That's right.
And not their customers.
Yeah.
So there is going to be some NDAs that have to be signed. No business owner is showing you their books without a letter of intent that you're interested in actually buying.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Good point.
So there's, and the other thing too is, on the franchise side, you need to make sure that you have a lawyer who is a franchise lawyer.
That's right.
Because franchise agreements are anywhere from 150 to 300 pages.
That's right. That's right.
Your cousin that's a lawyer is not the right lawyer to look at your franchise agreement.
What about the guy that handled my divorce or my speeding ticket?
It is a niche area of business.
That's right.
And you want to make sure that you are prepared and that you know that what you're going into, because franchise agreements are typically 10 years. So you just want to make sure that you understand what you're going into. But the other thing good about what we call franchise disclosure documents are the franchise has to tell you what their weaknesses are. They have to tell you how many units turned over. They have to tell you what their average unit revenues are. So there's a lot of information in a franchise disclosure document. You got to know how to read it. You got to have somebody translate it for you well. But when it comes to a business, you got to be able to, look at their books. You really do want to buy a business that has audited financial statements at least the last 3 to 5 years. But people are very reticent to give that up.
That's
So
right.
you gotta you gotta kind of date. You gotta meet them.
Sure.
You and your husband gotta go meet them and their husband. Because it is a trust. Somebody's trusting you with their baby.
That's right.
And they're also going to be very concerned about how you want to treat their staff.
That's
and
right.
they want to make sure you're going to keep their team or take care of them if you're going to let them go. Right.
Yeah.
So there's lots of things that go into it, but there is a chemistry thing. They gotta like you. Nobody's selling their business to somebody they don't like.
That's right.
So
that's right.
And it could take you 2 years to find the right business. So it's not, none of these processes are quick, right?
No.
None of these processes are quick until you make the decision. But once you make the decision that you want to buy this business, you can close in 60 to 90 days. You really can.
Yeah.
But the due diligence you're going to do before you get to that is going to be a year's worth.
Yeah. No, it's true. It's very true.
Just be prepared. It's an involved process. But if you could take advantage of somebody else's hard-learned lessons, if you could benefit from a brand somebody else already built, and it's a healthy business with contracts and revenue, recurring revenue coming in, man, I would take that bet all day and twice on Sunday. Okay.
Melinda Emerson, America's #1 small biz expert. Now you know why. She's also the CEO of Quintessence Group and a best-selling author. So, Melinda, thank you so much. This is great advice as it relates to buying a business or a franchise that so many people need to hear, and that's why we love having you in, because you spilled the goods.
Well, Jim, and let me just add, I am hosting the Next X CEO Summit this January 22nd, 23rd, and 24th. It's a 3-day virtual summit where I'm going to have the business brokers there. I'm going to have the finance people there. I'm going to have the franchisors there to tell you what you could be in for if you sign up for this kind of business.
We'll show all the information on the screen right here. I highly recommend that you do just that. You can thank me later, because I'm telling you that these events are world class for sure. Yep.
Thank you so much, Jim.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks for watching another edition of the Small Business Show with Jim Fitzpatrick, exclusively on ASBN.com.